I'll see you guys in the dark.
So for some background, I am a woman. I'm using a throwaway account, and I've changed the names due to the material shared, and that this is the current and still ongoing through court proceedings. So for the purpose of this story, I will call my ex Wang. Wang was a grown man living in the city with his mom and sisters. I was a country girl in a rural Australia. We met 16 years ago through the internet dating, and after some time of him traveling back and forth, we moved in together. Things were great, and I was treated how a real man is supposed to treat a woman. But all that changed with the flick of some internal switch in his head. Suddenly, I discovered what a psychopath is. No, not a narcissist, and not just the word people throw around all the time in conversation. The proper psychopath. The one that meets every red flag in the checklist. Anyway, so began 9.5 years of abuse. Google different types of domestic violence. I endured every single one of those, but without that cycle the professionals talk about. From beating the crap out of me and strangulation when I was pregnant, with his child, to checking the odometer on the car, tracking my kilometers, and counting receipts. There was only one apology, and it wasn't meant. There were never flowers, or a honeymoon phase, or a build-up. He never took any substances, was never under the influence of alcohol, and didn't have any mental health issues. Anyhow, let's go to the crazy part of the story. Not that all of that wasn't crazy as it was. It is well known that most dangerous time for a person from an abusive relationship is when they leave, so I will skip to the beginning of the part of the story. After 9.5 years, I finally called the police. Not before he uttered the words about killing me and taking the children somewhere no one will ever find them. If you feel like you want to ask or say the ridiculous, why didn't you just leave before? Then you are part of the problem in the world. Do some research. Anyway, the police finally arrived 2 hours after my 000 call. 000 is Australia's emergency number. Neither officer was actually prepared to make an arrest. Neither were in uniform. Neither had a weapon or handcuffs. And they had to call for a backup divvy van to be able to arrest him. So here begins the proceedings, 5 years of torment, both by him and the justice system. Police bailed him to his relative's address, a block away, and the magistrate ruled, when making a restraining order, that it was perfectly acceptable for him to drive by my house whenever he wanted in case he was going to work. He was, and still is, a dull bludger, and also allowed him to make phone calls every day. So at this point, a relative of mine comes up to stay with me and the kids. They don't sleep. I barely sleep. Every day we are finding fresh smoke butts, not only around the front of the house, though also by the back door, which is behind a 6-foot fence. Wang is a smoker. After seeing Wang driving past the house every day, and fearing for the safety of the children, I leave and go to the safety of the relatives in another town with the children. A detective calls me a few days later with concerns of my welfare. His station has a request from Wang for a welfare check on the child, and obviously the house was empty. Now, if you're not familiar, in Australia, if there are no current family court orders, then it is presumed, regardless of any restraining orders or the family history, that both parents have equal and shared responsibility for any children from the relationship. Therefore, a dangerous and violent ex is well within their rights to use the police to locate the other parent and children by requesting a welfare check on their children at any address they have. This is perfectly legal. Having done the check, police inform the checkers yes or no the children are at the address and are safe and well. This can be done to narrow or even locate where you are hiding, and the police must respond to such requests. On top of that, this request was made after a vehicle was pulled over by police, less than a block away from where we had lived. At this time, Wang did not know we ran to the place of hiding. Inside that vehicle, police found Wang, 2 cousins of his, and a friend of his, as well as a shotgun. Remember that Australia has a strict gun law. That is not an area known for hunting. It's actually a suburb in a large rural town. None of the individuals in the car had a gun license or a gun registered to them. Of course, Wang was not penned for the weapon, and I was informed that police could not keep us safe. We stayed at this relative's place for a few months, and only upon leaving, she informs me in the fact. She had seen Wang just standing outside of her kitchen window nearly every single night, in the middle of the night, just staring back. Not scary, right? Except when you find out that this relative's property was interstate from the previous place Wang and I lived. 5 hours away, actually. Wang had no relatives or known associates in this town. Her property was down a long driveway off a highway and literally right next door to a police training facility. Also, during this period, a judge felt that Wang's act of strangulation did not warrant any form of consequence, and he was allowed to walk from the courthouse a completely free man with no record on him. Given all this, we again fled, this time into yet another state, 3,000 kilometers away. Wang would have to be pretty bloody determined to get me if we were to make that trek. Turns out he was. It's November of 2014. I am trying to rebuild our broken lives far away from a torturous monster, and finally beginning to feel safe. I mean, we are far, far away. It's 10 p.m., and I'm hanging sheets out of the clothing line. The way this house is situated, it is a duplex, and a rear one for that matter, in a brand new estate that was not yet on digital mapping devices, or even known to emergency service GPS yet. No Google Earthing it, or old school mapping it would locate it. And my duplex isn't even visible by road. In fact, you wouldn't have even known there was one way back there. It looked as though it was just one house. To get to my door, you had to walk up a steep driveway and go through the side gate of the property that looked as though it led to the backyard of a house. So back to that night's event. I am hanging sheets on the line. Child had wet the bed again, and I hear a muffled type of cough sound. I glance to my left where the side gate is, and there is a gloved hand through the hole in the gate for a latch, and half a foot inside the gate. Now people say in situations like these that they get the chills. Not for me. My body tensed, and I am certain the whole thing went. Fuck. My brain just switched itself off for a few seconds. The intruder knew that I knew that they were there. I, in the best voice I could muster, which was more like a stuttering whisper, said, "I'm getting the dog," and not even looking away, began walking backwards into the open sliding door, closing it shut and locking it. Now I could feel my body. I could feel my heart, and certain it was about to pound out of my chest. My head was spinning, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I managed to steady my hand enough to call the police, and they turn up eventually. The intruder was gone. A week later, I get a phone call from Wang who says he hasn't been able to call the kids because he just flew back into the city the other day. Then immediately corrected his slip of the tongue and said he was away for work. His call breached the terms of the restraining order, and so I made a report to the police. They looked into his particulars and discovered that in fact he had purchased a return plane ticket to my city a few days before I had run into my intruder. Police put 2 and 2 together and arranged for a security update to be done on my property, but I didn't feel safe staying, so we moved. Did that stop Wang? No. I got a phone call the following February, and am informed Wang has been charged with very familiar offenses, as I have previously reported, against someone else, and they wanted my formal statement. I gave them one. Then, feeling unsafe due to someone sneaking around the house late at night, we again moved, and I am informed that Wang has been charged with several offenses related to my statement. I'm not talking about assault or a breach. I'm talking so serious the charges are to be heard in a Supreme Court with a judge and a jury with a maximum of 25 years each charge. If found guilty, yes, Australia's system is a joke to victims of crime. We need one like America's, where life, in most cases, because of 25 years here, is more often than not a maximum of 7 with parole in 2. Nope, not kidding. And fellow Aussies can attest to that as well. So my children and I are rebuilding and getting on with life, except for he creates a dating profile using old pictures that were taken when we were together, by using my old email address and locking me out so I couldn't delete the profile. Creates bills in my name and makes reports to Social Security in order to try and have my payments cut, stating I'm married or working. I am neither. I have PTSD. Doing either is far difficult to comprehend. Not only that, but every time I mention is to be heard at court in relation to Wang and the criminal proceedings, I find damage to my property. Nothing major, but something indiscreet, enough to let me know, hey, I was here, and I know you live here. The rear door has been broken into, the fly screen cut on the front window, car broken into, but nothing stolen despite there being valuables inside it, twice. The side gate broken, the front door attempted to be broken into more than once, the motion sensor light smashed. I set up security lights in an attempt to dissuade this piece of crap, and he obviously had no idea. One morning, I wake up to see blood in the pathway leading up to my front gate, and firm fingerprints made in blood, where someone was obviously stood holding the gate watching my house, bleeding. They must have had a weapon. My theory is that he was startled by the security lights that came on and hurt himself. On top of all that, this last hoorah was slashing 2 tires of my car parked in front of my house. All this crap happened 5 years after leaving Wang, during which time he had gone and created a new family and was still facing criminal proceedings. Did it end here? I wish, since being charged due to the cultural background of Wang. He has a lawyer for free, one who has a sweet-talked into believing he is completely innocent and wrongly accused. I say this as his lawyer is determined to beat the charges he is on. They are holding this by finding loopholes in the law, restricting what can be said about the events that occurred during the relationship, arguing against the law that prohibits husbands from being excluded from charges with crimes due to it being contained with a marriage, requesting information pertaining to the entire background, including foster care records and mental health records, school reports and referrals going all the way back to when I was 9 years of age. Yes, from when I was a child, before I even knew Wang existed, in an effort to find something to sway a jury into not guilty beyond reasonable doubt, even extending so far as to challenge the Constitution. Criminal proceedings have been going on for the last 4 years and set to continue into next year, not allowing me to let go. Monsters exist. They're parading around as people that are meant to love and protect you. So please, be wary. In college, a while ago now, I got into a relationship with a guy. He was fine until he found Jesus. He quickly went crazy, claiming demons spoke to him, trying to buy weapons from some shady friends we had, fantasizing about how he would hurt people, and becoming incredibly controlling and physically abusive, nearly killing me a few times. Needless to say, I got the fuck out after a few threats and really crazy behaviors. He left me alone for a while, and I thought that was that. I was headed to my dorm after a meeting one night when I decided to pass it and go to the student union, which was right down the street, just to get some ice cream. As I passed the dorm, I heard steps behind me. I turned around, and I thought I saw someone in a white shirt duck behind a big signboard. I kept walking, listening carefully. I heard something move and whipped around again. There, a person his size, staring at me from behind a tree. I couldn't see very well, but it really looked like him. I was mildly freaked out by then, but just walked a little bit faster. I'd hear the occasional footsteps and breathing behind me, but I didn't dare stop or let on that I knew someone, probably him, was there. I knew he owned a gun and would likely put a bullet into me given the chance. He was that psycho and upset that I dared to break up with him. I walked all the way to the union and got some ice cream and sat there in the store eating it, unwilling to go back into the unlit street in case it was my crazy armed ex. I still hadn't mustered the nerve to head back when my phone buzzed. My heart just fell out of my chest when I saw the message. It was some of my friends, a sweet couple. They'd been walking way behind me when they saw something that alarmed them enough to text me. "Your ex is walking around the street." They called me before I could even get the text back to them. "Where are you? Your ex is prowling around here near your dorm. He was coming back from the direction of the Union. I think he had a gun. Was he with you? What's going on?" Panicking, I assured them that I had not been with him, but someone who looked like him had been following me, and I was up at the Union, and I was too scared to go back alone. They practically yelled at me to stay there and not go anywhere, and that they were coming to get me. A few minutes later, they came running into the Union, breathless, eyes wide, asking me why he was by my dorm and what had happened. This is possibly what scared me the most. The boyfriend, who is a black belt in karate and is never scared, looked absolutely terrified. He was coiled into some kind of fighting stance and looking around wildly, afraid that my ex would appear with his gun. They told me they were taking me back to my dorm and calling the cops. They sandwiched me between them, and we walked back to my dorm as quickly as we dared. The boyfriend walked in front, yelling into the darkness that my ex had better not try anything. I let the two of them into my dorm, and we went up to my room, where my roommates put in a frantic call to the police. As we peeked out the window facing the street and the side of the dorm, there he was, lurking in the trees to the side of the dorm, looking upwards. A streetlight reflected something in his hand, something shiny. I saw him tug at the .22 I realized he was carrying, and look up. We locked eyes, and I saw this kind of rage in his eyes that froze me. In that moment, I knew he really was out to kill me, and my friends, and I had foiled him this time. He quickly turned and ran away through the trees. We didn't know whether he would come back and try to break in or something. So we called the police again, and lo and behold, sirens within minutes, and officers with guns drawn combing the area. They caught him a few hours later, still with the .22 in his hand. He confessed he was, indeed, going to try to kill me if he had the chance, but he didn't want to take pop shots at me with my friends there. Apparently I had just broken up with him. I was given over to Satan, and he had the duty to make sure that I died and went to hell. Of course, he went to jail, and later to a mental hospital. I moved out of the dorm a week later. I just couldn't live with the thought that he could break out and come after me again. I got some cop friends to keep an eye on my roommates until they could move out too. I was never really the same after all of this. I was so afraid and paranoid for years. Now I can be out and about without any fear, but I still have nightmares about him staring at me through the trees, gun in hand and rage in his eyes. I have never really posted here in this before, but let me state that this has happened to me years ago. My mom and I are both far away from this creepazoid, and we will never, ever see him again. It happened back in 2011, maybe 2012. My mom had recently broke up with a guy that I thought was someone who could be a better father than my actual one was. But he broke it off with my mom and moved away. At this time, it was heartbreaking. But my grandmother had the genius idea of hooking my mom up with this guy when the relationship with that last one ended. This man's name was Bobby. Well, a redneck. And don't get me wrong, rednecks, hillbillies, and the like can actually be really kindly and hard-working people. Bobby was not. Bobby was cruel, stupid, lazy, alcoholic, and all around a creep. I would not trust him no matter how many times Mom tried to get me to see the good in this asshole. He was a racist towards a man who was just trying to make a living as a pizza delivery driver. This poor guy is of Middle Eastern descent, and Bobby berated and yelled at this guy, shouting, "Go back to your own country." How did this upstanding man defend his racist behavior? By stating his cousin was killed while in the military, and that's why he acted like a prick. In the words of one of my close friends, Your cousin died protecting that Middle Eastern man's right as a U.S. citizen as well. Another thing Bobby had done was that during my 19th birthday party, he overheard me talking to my friends about my sexuality. I'm pan for the record. And after he demanded I kiss one of my friends to prove it, he went on and on about how sinful I am and that the Bible says this, that, and the other thing. On top of that, earlier one of my friends, who was 15 at the time, had dealt with Bobby leering at her dancing as if she were a stripper at a strip club. It took my mom a while to be rid of him, and it took them fighting and him calling her a whore because she was a teen mom. My mom was 14 when she had me, to kick this creep out of the house. This guy made me angry and afraid, and caused a rift between Mom and I. We've repaired our relationship, somewhat, but Bobby did this damage. The last time I've heard from him is when an ex of my uncle had a run-in with Bobby, and he asked about his daughter's location. Confused, the ex inquired who he was talking about, and he replied with my name. My uncle's ex-girlfriend flat out said, "She is not your daughter." To Bobby, if there is an off chance that you read this, you are computer illiterate anyways. I doubt you would. I am not your daughter. You are a racist, disgusting pig that took advantage of my mother's loneliness. And let's not meet ever again. Since this happened several years ago, I might get some parts mixed up, or some events I may have forgotten, so I'll try to retell my experience the best that I can. I also apologize for not being a good writer. It's probably going to be all jumbled up and confusing, but please bear with me. A bit of backstory. When I was a little kid, me and my mom would visit my grandparents, and we would all go to church together when we would visit from out of town. I had a friend at the church who I would be super excited to visit every time I went. We would talk a lot about Pokemon and just stuff we liked in general. Around the time I started puberty, he seemed to be attracted to me. He would hug me and ruffle my hair. He was a big guy, always wore the same yellow shirt. It seemed innocent for a while, and we sort of had a relationship for a few months. Everything was good up until we were dating. I was probably around 16, and he was several years older than me. He one day confided in me that he would see angels, and he was given a sword from Jesus to fight demons. Yes, he really said that. He said that he could see angels, and that Jesus Christ himself gave him a sword, which he stores in his body, to fight demons. And as stupid as I was, I believed him. I don't know why I did. The times where I wasn't visiting, he would talk over Steam, where we played TF2 most of the time. He would tell me these stories of fighting demons, and would talk to me through his angel, and it got so much weirder from there. He would tell me how I would be his princess in heaven, and that we would rule together. That's around the time I started getting uncomfortable and weirded out whenever he would try to hug or go further with me. At one point, over an incident I can go over later, I tried to cut ties with him and break up. He would not have it one bit. He would continuously send me emails begging for me to come back, and how I was making a bad choice leaving him. The last time I came into contact with him was also the last time I went to that church. Me and my mom and little brother all had to go to the church for a small get-together for my grandma's birthday party. Knowing the ex's family caters church events, I knew in my gut he was going to probably be there. My mom told me not to worry about it when I knew that something was going to happen. When we arrived, I told my mom I was going into a room where the little kids were playing at, where I knew I would be safe while we waited for the cake. I luckily brought my DS to distract myself and sat down to play. All of a sudden, I felt like someone was looming over me. A big presence. I knew it was him. I instantly went into flight mode and ran and hid around the church until he stopped following and looking for me. My mom and my brother instantly took me back to the house after I came out of hiding, and I never went back to that church. I hope we never ever meet again. He is just creepy, and I do not want anything to do with him anymore. A while ago, my mom broke up with her then boyfriend, Jack. Why? He's a liar, a cheater, and only stayed with my mom because it gave him and his asshole son a place to stay. Jack has borderline personality disorder, a condition in which people have long-term patterns of unstable emotions, such as feelings about themselves and others. My mother is outside talking to him as I write this. Also, he lives about 5 minutes up the road from us in a cheap little apartment, as he is unemployed right now. Anyway, he left her alone for a few months. When she got a new boyfriend, this one is actually pretty kind. He started texting her, calling her a slut and a whore because she found someone that is a good person and actually employed. His name is Gene Lewis. We call him J-Lo. My mom usually ignored him, but what started it all was one 2-minute phone call. He had called her multiple times, but this one time she picked up, and they had a good chat. He said he was having problems with finding a job and money, which means he's currently staying with his drug and alcohol addict ex-con brothers. After the phone call, he started hanging around our house. One day he showed up and talked to my mom for a bit, and then left. On another day, he stopped at the end of our driveway and talked to my sister and I. He talked to us both, but to me mostly. He said things like, "I hear you're really into Green Day, and I'm really sorry for what I did to your mom. I really do miss you guys." About a week after this, he stopped by while my mom wasn't home and asked to take us out for ice cream. I didn't go, thinking, yeah, alright, we're gonna fucking get kidnapped, or probably worse. There was no way in hell I'm going with you. My sister, however, went with him, and apparently oblivious and completely letting her guard down. But at least if he did kidnap her, he'd have a witness. Today I was in the bathroom just brushing my hair, so the bathroom door was open, and that's when I heard a little click noise. I realized instantly what it was. It was the front screen door. The motherfucker let himself into our house. He walked down the hallway and asked if it was okay if he talked to my mom. She was in her room sleeping, and I hate waking her up, but I do not want to piss this guy off at all. I told him sure, and he went on in, and she talked to him for a little bit, and then he left. The scariest incident, for now, happened a few hours later, and about 20 minutes ago. Every year my town has a cactus festival, which my mom, sister, J-Lo, and I went to. Now we leave the door open because we have 2 big dogs that could scare away anyone that tried to get into our house. But since they knew Jack, they let him in the house. He let himself into our house while we weren't home, completely freaking shit-faced, and went and fell asleep on my mom's bed even though we weren't home. When we got home, I sat in the living room and started browsing Reddit when I heard my mom, who had just gone into her room, saying, "Get the fuck out of my house." He refused to go. She threatened to call the police, and he still wouldn't leave. My mom is a good person, and even though he's stalking her, she won't call the police because she knows he's having problems. I keep telling her that it doesn't matter how many problems he's got. He can't just waltz into our house uninvited. But she will not listen to me at all. All that aside, she eventually managed to get him to walk to the front door, but he wouldn't go any further, and my mom had to use force to get him out the front door. Once he was out, he started walking away, but quickly came back. He said if she talked to him, he would go away and never come back. And if he does, my mom will call the cops. My mom talked to him for a good 15 minutes, and he's gone now. Hopefully, he won't come back. I'll keep updated if I have to, if he happens to come back or not. So anyways, mom's ex-boyfriend, don't ever come back to the house. You're creepy, and we don't want you in our lives ever again. In college, I got into a relationship with a guy. He was fine until he found Jesus. He quickly went crazy, claiming demons spoke to him, trying to buy weapons from some shady friends he had, fantasizing about how he would hurt people, and becoming incredibly controlling and physically abusive. Needless to say, I got out of there after a few threats and some really crazy behaviors. He left me alone for a while, and I thought that was that. I was heading to my dorm after a meeting one night when I decided to pass it and go to the student union, which was right down the street, to get some ice cream. As I passed the dorm, I heard steps behind me. I turned around, and I thought I saw someone in a white shirt duck behind a big signboard. I kept walking, listening very carefully. I heard something move and whipped around again. There, a person his size, staring at me behind a tree. I couldn't see very well, but it really looked like him. I was mildly freaked out by then, but just walked a little bit faster. I'd hear the occasional footsteps and breathing behind me, but I didn't dare to stop or let on that I knew someone, probably him, was there. I knew he owned a gun. It would likely put a bullet into me given the chance, because he was that psycho and upset that I dared to break up with him. I walked all the way to the Union and got some ice cream and just sat there in the store eating, unwilling to go back out into the unlit street in case it was my crazy ex. I still hadn't mustered the nerve to head back when my phone buzzed. My heart just fell out of my chest when I saw the message. It was some of my friends, a sweet couple. They'd been walking way behind me when they saw something that alarmed them enough to text me. "Your ex is walking around the street." They called me before I could even text them back. "Where are you? Your ex is prowling around here near your dorm. He was coming back from the direction of the Union. I think he had a gun. Was he with you? What's going on?" Panicked, I assured them that I had not been with him, but someone who looked like him had been following me, and I was at the Union and was too scared to go back alone. They practically yelled at me to stay there and not go anywhere, and that they were coming my way. A few minutes later, they came running into the Union breathless, eyes wide, asking me why he was at my dorm and what had happened. This was possibly what scared me the most. The boyfriend, who is a black belt in karate and is never scared, looked absolutely terrified. He was coiled into some kind of fighting stance and looking around wildly, afraid that my ex would appear with his gun. They told me they were taking me back to my dorm and calling the cops. They sandwiched me between them, and we walked back to my dorm as quickly as we dared, the boyfriend walking in front and yelling into the darkness that my ex better not try anything. I let the two of them into my dorm, and we went up to my room, where my roommates put in a frantic phone call to the police. As we peeked out the window facing the streets inside of the dorm, there he was, lurking in the trees to the side of the dorm, looking up. A streetlight reflected something in his hand, something shiny. I saw him tug at the .22 I realized he was carrying and look up. We locked eyes, and I saw something kind of like rage in his eyes that froze me. In that moment, I knew he really was out to end me and my friends, and I had foiled him this time. He quickly turned and ran away through the trees. We didn't know whether he would come back and try to break in or something, so we called the police again, and lo and behold, sirens within minutes, and officers with guns drawn combing the area. They caught him a few hours later, still with the .22 in his hand. He confessed he was indeed going to hurt us if he had the chance, but he didn't want to take the pot shots at me with my friends there. Apparently, since I'd broken up with him, I was given over to Satan, and it was his duty to make sure I died and went to hell. Of course, he went to jail, and later to a mental hospital, and I moved out of that dorm a week later. I just couldn't live with the thought that he would break out. And come after me again. I got some cop friends to keep an eye on my roommates until they could move out too. I was never really the same after all of this. I was so afraid and paranoid for years. Now, I can be out and about without any fear, but I still have nightmares about him staring at me through the trees, gun in hand, and rage in his eyes. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.